Principle 8. Persistence. Most people do not lack dreams, and they do not lack intelligence. What they lack is the ability to stay until the end. Persistence is the invisible line that separates those who achieve what they want from those who live with regret. It is not the strongest who wins, but the one who lasts the longest. Life does not reward those who start fast. It pays those who refuse to quit. Persistence is not blind stubbornness. It is the ability to stay the course when emotions change, when results have not yet appeared, and when the world around you begins to doubt you. Many people start with high energy and strong determination, but after a few failures, they convince themselves that this path is not meant for them. In reality, this is exactly the path meant for them. They just have not gone far enough. Weak people quit when they meet resistance. Strong people understand that resistance is a necessary part of the journey. There is no road to real value that is smooth. If a goal does not require persistence, it is probably not big enough to change your life. Persistence is the price you pay for extraordinary results. One common mistake is believing that inspiration will sustain action. Inspiration comes and goes. Persistence is what keeps you moving. Successful people do not act because they always feel motivated. They act because they have committed to their goals, even on days when they feel nothing at all. Discipline is born from persistence, not from emotion. Persistence begins internally, in the way you talk to yourself when things do not go as planned. When results do not appear, do you tell yourself that you are failing or that you are laying the foundation? Those who quit see evidence of futility. Those who persist see signs of accumulation. They face the same situation, but reach completely different conclusions. No major success appears on the first attempt. Stories of overnight success are illusions created by skipping years of silent effort. Persistence works best when no one is applauding, no one is recognizing you, and there are no clear signs that you are on the right path. This is where most people quit, and this is exactly where opportunities begin to open for the few who remain. The real difference between successful people and unsuccessful ones is their ability to tolerate delayed results. Unsuccessful people need to see results immediately to continue. Successful people accept working for a long time without instant validation. They understand that results are the natural consequence of actions repeated long enough. Persistence is also the ability to stand back up after failure without letting your ego collapse. Failure does not define who you are. It only reflects that the current method is not working. Those who quit attach failure to their self-worth. Those who persist separate the two. They change strategies, not goals. An essential part of persistence is managing mental fatigue. Most of the time, you are not tired from work. You are tired from doubt. Doubt drains energy faster than effort. Persistent people learn to act even while their minds are questioning. They do not wait for doubt to disappear. They move forward with it. Many people confuse persistence with suffering. Persistence does not mean torturing yourself. It means understanding why you are doing this and that the goal matters enough to justify temporary discomfort. When the reason is strong enough, even a hard path becomes meaningful. Persistence is closely tied to belief in your own capacity. If you believe you do not deserve big results, you will stop before reaching them. Persistent people are not always confident, but they believe enough to continue. They allow themselves to learn while acting, to fail while progressing, and to grow through direct contact with reality. One critical truth is that persistence cannot exist without a clear goal. You cannot stay committed to something you do not truly want. When the goal is vague, persistence becomes fragile. When the goal is clear and powerful, persistence becomes automatic. You no longer force yourself to continue. You continue because there is no other option that aligns with who you want to become. Persistence is also the ability to work in silence. Weak people need constant recognition. Strong people work when no one is watching. They do not need to prove to the world that they are trying. They only need to prove to themselves that they did not quit today. Success does not come from loud words, but from small actions repeated daily. Many people fail right before success because they misjudge how close they are.
They believe the distance is still far, when in reality only one step remains. Persistence helps you cross this dangerous moment, the moment when exhaustion peaks but results have not yet appeared. This is where others turn away and you move forward. Persistence does not eliminate the fear of failure, it makes you familiar with it. When you have failed enough times and still continue, failure loses its power over you. You stop fearing it, and when fear disappears, your speed naturally increases. Persistent people understand that every time they refuse to quit, they are building a new identity, the identity of someone who finishes what they start. Once this identity forms, it spreads into every area of life. You don't just persist in business, you persist in relationships, in personal growth, and in maintaining your standards. Persistence is also the ability to say no to easy paths that do not lead to the final goal. Many temptations appear along the way, promising faster results with less pain. Those without persistence constantly change direction. Those with persistence understand that changing direction too early is the most subtle form of quitting. When you observe truly successful people, you will notice they are not obsessed with short-term results. They focus on becoming someone capable of producing long-term results. Persistence is the tool that builds that capability. No one is born persistent. It is forged each time you choose to continue when things become difficult. At this stage, persistence is no longer effort. It becomes a habit. You no longer ask whether you should continue. You only ask what the next step is. When you reach this point, you have already passed most of your competition because most of them stopped long ago. Sustainable wealth, real power, and personal freedom do not come from one single decision. They come from thousands of small decisions not to quit. Every day you persist, you add another brick to the foundation of your life. No one sees each brick, but one day they will see the structure. This is the core of persistence, not glamorous, not loud, but absolutely essential. When you master this principle, you no longer look for guarantees from the outside. You become someone who creates your own probability of success. And once you reach that level, very few things in life can stop you.
Mastering self-discipline and emotional control. Most people think failure comes from a lack of intelligence, luck, or opportunity. That's a lie they tell themselves to feel better. In reality, most people fail because they cannot control themselves. They cannot control their impulses, their emotions, their fears, and their short-term desires. Self-discipline is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And like any skill, it must be trained, reinforced, and protected. The marketplace does not reward potential. It rewards consistency. It does not care about your intentions, it only responds to your actions. Every major fortune in history was built by individuals who learned how to act correctly even when they didn't feel like it. They learned how to stay calm under pressure, stay focused under distraction, and stay committed when quitting felt easier. Emotional control is not about suppressing emotions. It's about not letting emotions make decisions for you. Fear, anger, excitement, impatience, and ego are the silent killers of progress. When emotions take the driver's seat, logic gets pushed into the trunk, and once logic is gone, mistakes become inevitable. Most people lose money not because they don't know what to do, but because they react emotionally. They panic when markets fall. They hesitate when opportunity appears. They overcommit when things go well. Emotional volatility leads to financial instability. If you cannot control your emotions, you cannot control your outcomes. Discipline is the bridge between knowledge and execution. You can read every book, watch every video, and attend every seminar, but without discipline, nothing changes. Discipline is waking up and doing the work even when motivation is gone. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is permanent. High-level performers understand one thing clearly. Feelings are unreliable. They don't wait to feel ready. They act first and feelings follow later. The discipline to act without emotional permission separates professionals from amateurs. Self-discipline also means learning to delay gratification. The average person wants comfort now and success later. The successful person accepts discomfort now to secure freedom later. Every meaningful achievement requires sacrifice in the present for a larger payoff in the future. If you cannot say no to short-term pleasure, you will always say yes to long-term regret. Emotional mastery also requires understanding your triggers. Everyone has them. Certain situations provoke fear, certain people provoke anger, certain outcomes provoke ego. If you are unaware of your triggers, they will control you. Awareness creates distance, distance creates choice, and choice creates power. Powerful people are not emotionless, they're emotionally intelligent. They feel deeply, but they act strategically. They do not react impulsively, they respond deliberately. This ability is developed through repetition, reflection, and restraint. Another critical aspect of self-discipline is routine. Structure creates stability. When your days are chaotic, your decisions become chaotic. When your habits are disciplined, your results become predictable. Routine eliminates unnecessary decisions, conserving mental energy for high-value actions. Discipline also means finishing what you start. Most people start strong and fade quickly. They chase novelty instead of mastery. Real growth happens when you push through boredom, resistance, and doubt. The ability to stay the course when progress feels slow is a rare advantage. Emotional control is especially critical during success. Failure humbles you, but success tests your character. Ego grows, caution fades, and overconfidence creeps in. Many people destroy themselves at the peak because they stop listening, stop learning, and stop respecting risk. True discipline keeps you grounded even when you're winning. Self-discipline is not punishment, it is self-respect. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your confidence grows. Every time you break one, your self-trust erodes. Over time, this internal relationship determines how far you go. In the end, discipline is freedom. The disciplined mind is calm. The disciplined life is stable. And the disciplined individual is unstoppable. When you control yourself, nothing outside of you can control your destiny. Follow, subscribe, and share the channel to gain new knowledge and grow every day. Self-discipline. At this stage, discipline is no longer a skill you are trying to build. It becomes identity. A disciplined person does not need reminders to do the right thing. They operate from an internal standard so strong that any action below that standard is simply unacceptable. This is where discipline shifts from force to nature, from effort to default choice. The real difference between those who move forward and those who stay stuck is not knowledge, it is the ability to maintain standards when there is no external pressure. When no one is watching, no one is evaluating, no one is rewarding, you still perform as if the result is non-negotiable. Wealthy people do not wait to be pushed. They apply pressure to themselves because they understand one truth clearly. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. At this level, an uncomfortable but critical truth becomes clear. Most people do not fail because they lack opportunity. They fail because they lack the discipline to exploit opportunity consistently over a long enough period of time. Opportunity rarely looks exciting. It usually shows up as boring work, repetitive habits, and invisible effort. The undisciplined chase feelings. The disciplined build outcomes. At its deepest level, self-discipline is the ability to manage energy, not just time. You cannot perform at a high level with a broken body, a scattered mind, and uncontrolled emotions. Disciplined individuals understand that sleep, nutrition, movement, and environment are not secondary concerns. They are foundations. When the foundation is weak, every plan collapses sooner or later. Another critical layer of discipline is mental discipline. Not every thought deserves belief. Undisciplined people let emotions lead. Disciplined people choose their thoughts carefully. They do not allow fear, procrastination, or self-pity to control their actions. They observe thoughts the way they observe weather. Storms may appear, but they do not let rain dictate direction.
As discipline strengthens, decision-making changes. You stop asking what you feel like doing and start asking what must be done. You stop judging actions by short-term comfort and start judging them by long-term consequences. Wealthy people think in outcomes. Poor people think in emotions. This difference repeats daily and compounds into a gap that cannot be closed. Discipline also shows up in the ability to say no. No to opportunities that look attractive but pull you off course. No to relationships that drain energy. No to habits that provide short-term pleasure but destroy long-term potential. Undisciplined people fear missing out. Disciplined people fear losing their standards. At maturity, discipline no longer requires external harshness. It becomes self-respect. You work seriously not because someone demands it, but because you refuse to accept a weak version of yourself. You keep promises to yourself because you understand that every broken commitment erodes internal trust, one of the most valuable invisible assets you possess. Highly disciplined individuals act before emotion has time to interfere. They design systems to reduce decision-making under fatigue. Habits, schedules, and personal rules exist not to restrict freedom, but to protect energy for decisions that truly matter. When the system is strong, willpower no longer needs to fight daily battles. Self-discipline also reveals itself in how you respond to failure. Undisciplined people use failure as an excuse to quit. Disciplined people use failure as data. They do not drown in negative emotion. They analyze, adjust, and return to execution as quickly as possible. Slowing down is acceptable. Stopping is not. With enough perspective, it becomes clear that discipline creates consistency, and consistency creates wealth. There is no breakthrough that replaces thousands of quiet days doing the right thing. Those who chase fast results ignore this principle. Those who build lasting wealth place discipline above emotion. At this point, external motivation is unnecessary. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline stays. You no longer need encouragement because you know who you are and what you refuse to do. Discipline becomes a barrier protecting you from your own most subtle temptations. Finally, understand this clearly. Self-discipline is not endless sacrifice. It is an intelligent exchange. You give up short-term comfort in return for long-term control. You reject instinct-driven living to build a life by design. Over time, the reward is not only money, but freedom of thought, action, and choice. This is the conclusion of this principle, but not the end of the journey. Discipline is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is something you choose daily. And every day you honor that choice, you lay another brick in a form of wealth that no one can ever take from you.
Follow, subscribe, and share the channel to gain new knowledge and grow every day.
Principle 9. The power of collective intelligence. There is a limit that every individual, no matter how intelligent or hardworking, will eventually reach. It is the limit of their own mind. Poor people refuse to accept this. Wealthy people understand it clearly. No great wealth is built through isolated thinking. Real power emerges when multiple minds align toward a single objective, share the same standards, and compensate for one another's weaknesses. Collective intelligence is not the crowd. Crowds create noise. Collective intelligence creates power. Crowds dilute responsibility. Collective intelligence sharpens it. Those who fail to understand this principle chase numbers. Those who understand it chase alignment. You do not need many people, you need the right ones. A true intellectual alliance is formed when individuals share the same ambition but bring different skills, experiences, and perspectives. When each person contributes a piece that others lack, the result becomes far greater than the sum of its parts. This is not addition, this is multiplication. People who work alone often get trapped inside their own mental loops. They repeat the same decisions, the same reactions, the same mistakes, then convince themselves it is circumstance. Those who operate within collective intelligence are forced to confront alternative viewpoints. This friction can be uncomfortable, but it is precisely what creates breakthroughs.
A common mistake is believing that collective intelligence is only for large corporations or complex organizations. In reality, this principle applies at every level. An entrepreneur, a small business owner, even an individual building a career needs a surrounding intelligence network, not to depend on it, but to accelerate progress. Collective intelligence does not form by accident. It requires intention and deliberate selection. Those serious about their goals do not build relationships casually. They observe carefully who pushes them forward, who holds them back, and who distracts them. Every relationship carries a cost, whether in time, energy, or thinking. An effective intelligence group is built on trust and mutual respect. There is no room for fragile egos, no room for performance or validation seeking. Each member enters with a shared focus on results, not personal recognition. The moment ego overtakes purpose, collective intelligence collapses. Wealthy individuals understand they are not strong in every domain. They are not embarrassed by their weaknesses. They treat them as critical data for building the right alliances. Weak individuals pretend to know everything. Strong individuals assemble teams to compensate. This ability creates long-term advantage. True collective intelligence does not only share knowledge, it shares standards. When you surround yourself with people who operate at a higher standard, you are forced to rise or be removed. No pressure is needed. The environment applies it naturally. This is the most powerful form of pressure because it is structural, not emotional. Within a collective intelligence environment, ideas are constantly sharpened. Weak ideas quickly reveal blind spots. Strong ideas become stronger through challenge. Those without solid foundations fear being questioned. Those serious about results see challenge as protection from expensive mistakes. Collective intelligence also stabilizes discipline of thought. When you are tired, lost, or emotionally compromised, the group acts as an anchor, not to comfort you, but to pull you back into reality. Successful people do not seek comfort, they seek clarity. Another critical element is alignment of values. You can learn skills from many people, but collective intelligence only functions when core values are shared. If one person prioritizes long-term outcomes while another chases short-term gain, conflict is inevitable. Value alignment creates consistency in action. Many people fail because they choose the wrong environment. They set big goals while surrounding themselves with small thinking. Each time they speak about ambition, they receive doubt, ridicule, or defensive advice. Over time, this erodes confidence and shrinks vision. Environment always beats willpower if left unmanaged. Those who understand this principle do not wait to be invited. They do not wait for ideal conditions. They connect, build, and nurture strategic relationships over time. For them, this is not social activity. It is a core component of wealth building. Collective intelligence shortens the learning curve. Instead of paying for every mistake personally, you learn from the mistakes of others. Instead of navigating in darkness, you walk paths already illuminated. Poor people see asking questions as weakness. Wealthy people see not asking as the greatest risk. When the group functions correctly, a unique resonance emerges. Ideas arrive faster, decisions become clearer, execution becomes sharper. This is not abstract emotion, it is the outcome of multiple minds focused in the same direction. This power cannot be measured numerically, but it is unmistakable in results. It is important to understand that collective intelligence does not remove personal responsibility, it intensifies it. Each individual remains accountable for their decisions and execution. The group does not exist to absorb blame, it exists to raise standards. Those who cannot keep pace remove themselves. At a deeper level, collective intelligence reshapes how you see yourself. When surrounded by disciplined action takers, excuses become harder to tolerate. You clearly see the gap between potential and behavior. That awareness becomes the catalyst for change. This principle does not promise comfort, it promises growth. You will be challenged, you will be exposed. You will confront weaknesses you previously ignored. In exchange, you gain speed,
clarity, and leverage no individual can create alone. This is the foundation of every great empire, not a solitary genius, but an organized intelligence structure where each individual plays a strategic role. When you master this principle, you do not simply expand your capacity, you multiply it. And once that happens, old limits lose their meaning.
A smart man can move fast, but the right group moves far. And more importantly, they move without paying the price of stupid mistakes. In the world of money, business, and power, what destroys people is not a lack of information, but an excess of ego. People believe they are smart enough, experienced enough, strong enough to decide everything on their own. And then they make mistakes they never should have made if they had allowed others to challenge their thinking. Collective intelligence is not about gathering people. It is about structure. It is about discipline. It is about standards. A real group does not exist to applaud, comfort, or share emotions. It exists to apply pressure, expose blind spots, and force every individual to raise their level of thinking. Bad decisions do not come from stupidity. They come from having no one brave enough to say you are wrong. Most people live their entire lives surrounded by those who never speak the truth because they fear conflict, judgment, or revealing their own lack of competence. True collective intelligence does not operate on comfort. It operates on controlled discomfort. Every idea must be pressured. Every plan must be dissected. Every decision must survive the skepticism of minds that are equal or superior. A wise man does not look for people who agree with him. He looks for people capable of opposing him. In that environment, ego has no place. Anyone who enters trying to prove they are better than others will be eliminated quickly. Collective intelligence does not need heroes. It needs people willing to put ego aside in exchange for long-term results. This is where most people fail. They enjoy being the smartest person in the room. But when you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Those who build real wealth, real systems, and lasting power always surround themselves with minds that keep them uncomfortable. Not out of fear, but out of constant challenge. Every decision is questioned. Every assumption is attacked at its weakest point. That pressure creates refinement. Collective intelligence does not exist to make you feel safe. It exists to reduce the probability that you make stupid decisions. No one is immune to mistakes. Experience does not eliminate them. Past success does not protect you from bad decisions in the future. The only thing that does is a system where you are not allowed to fully trust yourself. The truly wealthy do not rely on isolated intuition. They rely on process, and collective intelligence is part of that process. When a major decision appears, they do not ask how they feel. They ask whether the decision has been tested hard enough. They do not need unanimous agreement. They need deep resistance. A strong collective intelligence group does not need to be large. It needs to be right. 3 to 5 qualified, disciplined, honest minds are worth more than 50 people who only nod their heads. Each person must represent a different angle, a different experience, a different way of thinking, not to argue for entertainment, but to ensure no blind spots are ignored. When a decision survives all those perspectives, it is no longer a personal opinion. It becomes a forged decision. At that point, execution becomes much easier. There is no doubt left in your mind. You know the decision is not emotional impulse, but the result of a brutal filtering process. From the outside, people think these individuals are confident. In reality, that confidence does not come from the individual. It comes from the system behind them. People without collective intelligence constantly have to perform certainty. Those with systems do not need to act. A common mistake is believing collective intelligence slows things down. In reality, it accelerates progress over the long term. It reduces reversals. It prevents expensive failures. It eliminates wrong paths early. Moving fast in the wrong direction only exhausts you. Moving slightly slower in the right direction is how durable wealth is built.
The truly wise are willing to slow down and think together because they understand that every major decision carries delayed consequences. When those consequences appear, it is already too late to fix them. Collective intelligence allows you to see those consequences earlier than others. It lets you borrow the vision of those who came before you. It lets you borrow experience you have not yet paid for. It gives you access to lessons that would otherwise cost a lifetime or a fortune. But nothing is free. To be part of such a group, you must meet the standard, a standard of thinking, ethics, discipline, and the ability to be corrected. If you are easily offended, defensive, or obsessed with explaining yourself, you do not belong. Collective intelligence does not need explanations, it needs correction. A strong group is one where being called wrong is not humiliation, but part of the process. No one protects their image, they protect results. This is the difference between long-term players and those chasing quick wins. Long-term players build systems, short-term players build ego. When you look at families that remain wealthy across generations or corporations that survive for decades, you will see one common trait. Decisions are never made by a single mind. There is always a council, always resistance, always standards higher than personal emotion. They do not believe in the lone genius. They believe in structures that prevent even smart people from making stupid decisions. Collective intelligence does not make you weaker, it makes you harder to destroy. Because your greatest enemy is not the market or competitors, but the bad decisions you make when no one dares to challenge you. When you walk out of a room with a thoroughly tested decision, you carry an invisible advantage. Others only see the result. They never see how much risk was removed beforehand. That's real power. The power of consistently making fewer stupid decisions than the rest of the world. Not always right, but wrong rarely enough to survive longer in the game.
Collective intelligence. At this stage, collective intelligence is no longer an academic concept or an abstract theory. It becomes a real operating system where the quality of your decisions no longer depends solely on your individual ability, but is elevated through controlled friction between multiple perspectives. The wealthy do not seek easy agreement. They seek the truth, even when that truth is uncomfortable. One of the core values of collective intelligence is its ability to strip away personal illusions. Human beings are easily deceived by their own beliefs. When an idea exists only in your head, it can appear flawless. But once it is placed inside a high-standard group where every person has the right to question and the duty to challenge, its weaknesses surface quickly. This is not destruction, it is refinement. The weak avoid such environments because they fear being challenged. The strong step into them deliberately because they understand that an idea unable to survive criticism does not deserve to face the market. Collective intelligence does not make you weaker, it forces you to become stronger, clearer, more logical, and more grounded in reality. At a higher level, collective intelligence does not operate on emotions or personal relationships, it operates on standards. Everyone has the right to speak, but not every opinion carries the same weight. The value of an opinion is determined by experience, past results, and alignment with the shared objective. The wealthy respect people, but they submit to principles. An effective collective intelligence group does not need to be large. In fact, the larger the group, the more diluted the quality of thinking becomes. The wealthy build small circles where each individual contributes a distinct cognitive advantage. One person sees strategy, another sees risk, another understands the market, another excels at execution. These differences do not create conflict when they are anchored to the same value framework. What matters most is that collective intelligence does not mean surrendering decision-making authority. On the contrary, it enables better decisions. True leaders do not look for people who agree with them, they look for people with the courage to tell them they are wrong. But after listening, weighing, and synthesizing, final responsibility still belongs to one person. Collective intelligence supports decisions, it does not replace accountability. Many people mistakenly believe teamwork means shared responsibility. In reality, within collective intelligence, responsibility is clearly defined.
Each person is accountable for their perspective. The decision maker is accountable for the outcome. This clarity creates discipline and eliminates ambiguity, which is the enemy of performance. Collective intelligence is also a powerful risk management tool. When you decide alone, you only see what you know. When multiple minds analyze together, the probability of missing critical variables drops significantly. The wealthy do not avoid risk by doing nothing, they manage risk by examining it from multiple angles before acting. At this level, a critical truth becomes clear. Speed does not come from thinking fast, it comes from thinking correctly from the start. A fast, wrong decision is still wrong. Collective intelligence may slow decision-making in the short term, but it accelerates long-term results by reducing costly stakes. Another key factor is maintaining standards within the group. Collective intelligence only works when every member accepts being evaluated. If personal ego rises above the shared objective, the group quickly turns into a social exchange with no strategic value. The wealthy do not build groups to feel comfortable, they build groups to become sharper. In this environment, silence can be more valuable than speech. Experienced individuals do not need to talk much. They listen, ask the right questions, and speak only when necessary. Collective intelligence is not a competition of who sounds smarter. It is a process of distilling thought until the best decision emerges. Another critical advantage is the ability to escape personal cognitive limits. Every individual is constrained by their own life experience. When you rely only on yourself, your world is small. When you connect with people who carry different experiences, your world expands. The wealthy deliberately place themselves in rooms where they are not the smartest person present. However, collective intelligence is not free. It demands humility, discipline, and ego control. You must accept that your ideas may be rejected. You must be willing to change your position when data changes. Those who cannot tolerate this will either leave collective intelligence environments or be naturally excluded. At the highest level, collective intelligence becomes a self-operating decision system. Standards are clearly defined. Core questions are repeated every time. Does this serve the long-term objective? What is the largest risk? What happens if we are wrong? When this system functions smoothly, individuals no longer need to strain themselves to rethink everything from scratch. The wealthy understand that major success is rarely the product of a single brain. It is the result of multiple minds organized correctly. Collective intelligence does not erase individual impact. It amplifies individual capability to a level that cannot be reached alone. In the end, collective intelligence teaches a critical lesson about real power. Power is not the ability to impose your will on others. Power is the ability to build a system where truth outranks ego, where decisions are tested before execution, and where mistakes are detected early instead of paid for later. When you master this principle, you no longer rely on inspiration or luck. You build a solid thinking structure around yourself. Every major decision stops being a gamble and becomes the result of disciplined evaluation. This is how the wealthy maintain their advantage over time. At its final stage, collective intelligence is not just a tool for wealth, it is the foundation of stability, sustainability, and long-term adaptability. In a volatile world, the winners are not the smartest individuals, but those who know how to gather, organize, and direct the intelligence of many towards a single direction. Subscribe and follow the channel for daily self-improvement and valuable knowledge.
Principle 10. Transmutation of drive. Most people misunderstand where real power comes from. They believe power is physical. They believe discipline is about force. They believe wealth is built by working harder, longer, louder. That belief is the reason most people stay exactly where they are. At the highest level, wealth is created by energy. Not chaotic energy, not emotional bursts, but focused, disciplined, redirected force. The kind of internal drive that most people waste, suppress, or let control them instead of the other way around. Every human being is born with a limited amount of creative force. That force can express itself in many forms. When it is unmanaged, it leaks into distraction, impulsive behavior, emotional reactions, and short-term pleasure. When it is disciplined and redirected, it becomes ambition, persistence, clarity, and long-term power. The wealthy do not possess more energy than others, they simply waste less of it. This principle is about understanding how raw desire can be transformed into productive momentum. Not denied, not suppressed, but refined and redirected. The man who tries to eliminate desire becomes weak. The man who lets desire control him becomes unstable. The man who learns to channel desire becomes dangerous in the best possible way. Most people are driven by impulses they do not understand. They react instead of directing. They chase stimulation instead of building momentum. They feel exhausted not because they work too hard, but because their internal energy is scattered across too many directions. The disciplined individual operates differently. He recognizes that his strongest impulses contain the same energy that can be used to build something meaningful. Instead of fighting that energy, he gives it structure. He gives it direction. He gives it a long-term objective. This is where most people fail. They believe discipline means killing desire. In reality, discipline means mastering it. Look closely at individuals who build lasting wealth. You will notice a pattern. They are calm under pressure. They are not easily distracted. They do not burn out quickly. They seem to possess an unusual level of sustained focus. That focus is not an accident. It is the result of redirected drive. Uncontrolled desire seeks immediate release. Controlled desire seeks long-term expansion. The difference between the two is not morality, it is strategy. The average person gives their best energy to short-term gratification. By the time they sit down to work on something meaningful, their internal fuel tank is already empty. The disciplined individual does the opposite. He protects his energy. He invests it intentionally. He understands that every impulse can either weaken him or strengthen him, depending on how it is used. This principle is uncomfortable for many people because it demands personal responsibility at the deepest level. You can no longer blame circumstances, environment, or other people. You must accept that your internal state determines your external results. Energy is neutral. It is neither good nor bad. It becomes destructive only when it lacks direction. It becomes powerful only when it is focused. The wealthy understand this intuitively. They build routines that preserve mental clarity. They avoid habits that drain focus. They structure their days in a way that protects their ability to think clearly and act deliberately. They are not rigid, they are intentional. At higher levels, this redirected drive becomes something more than motivation. It becomes identity. The individual no longer relies on external pressure to act. Action becomes a natural expression of who they are. This is why discipline looks effortless from the outside. People assume it is talent or genetics. In reality, it is the byproduct of internal alignment. When desire and purpose move in the same direction, resistance disappears. Most people experience constant internal conflict. One part of them wants comfort, another part wants progress. This internal friction drains energy. The disciplined individual resolves this conflict by deciding, once and for all, which direction matters. After that decision, energy stops leaking. When internal conflict ends, momentum begins. This principle also explains why many intelligent people never succeed. Intelligence without disciplined drive becomes overthinking. Knowledge without direction becomes hesitation. Potential without structure becomes frustration. Raw drive alone is not enough. It must be combined with clarity. What are you building? Why does it matter? Where is it going? When desire is attached to a vague objective, it becomes unstable. When it is attached to a precise vision, it becomes relentless. The wealthy are not always the smartest in the room. They are often the most internally aligned. Their thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction. This alignment creates speed without chaos. Another critical element of this principle is restraint. True power is not expressed through excess. It is expressed through control. The individual who can delay gratification gains leverage over time, not because delay is virtuous, but because it preserves energy for larger objectives. Short-term pleasure consumes energy and leaves nothing behind.
Long-term creation consumes energy but produces compounding results. The disciplined individual chooses the second path consistently. This does not mean life becomes joyless, it means joy becomes deeper. Shallow pleasure fades quickly. Purpose-driven satisfaction lasts. The wealthy understand that fulfillment comes from building, not consuming. At this level, desire is no longer something to be feared, it becomes fuel. Ambition stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like direction. People often ask how to maintain motivation over long periods. The answer is simple, but uncomfortable. Motivation fades when energy is misused. When energy is aligned with purpose, motivation is no longer required. Movement becomes natural. This principle also explains why environments matter. The people you surround yourself with either reinforce discipline or erode it. Unfocused environments normalize distraction. Disciplined environments normalize control. The wealthy choose environments that support the version of themselves they are building. The same applies to information consumption. What you feed your mind either sharpens your focus or scatters it. Noise drains energy. Clarity multiplies it. Over time, redirected drive creates an internal pressure toward growth. You no longer need to push yourself. You feel uncomfortable staying stagnant. Progress becomes the default state. This is where long-term success separates itself from temporary achievement. Anyone can surge forward briefly. Few can sustain momentum year after year. Sustained momentum is the product of disciplined energy management. This principle is not about intensity, it is about consistency. Intensity burns fast, consistency compounds quietly. The wealthy are patient, not because they lack urgency, but because they understand timing. They know when to act aggressively and when to conserve energy. They do not confuse motion with progress. Eventually, this disciplined drive reshapes how you see obstacles. Resistance no longer feels personal, it becomes information. Setbacks no longer drain motivation, they refine strategy. At this stage, effort feels cleaner, more emotionless, more deliberate. You act because it is aligned, not because you are forcing yourself. This is the foundation of long-term dominance in any field. Not talent, not luck, not raw ambition, but the ability to take powerful internal forces and give them structure, direction, and patience. When this principle is mastered, discipline stops feeling like sacrifice. It becomes identity. And once identity shifts, results follow naturally. This is not something you achieve once. It is something you practice daily. Each decision either preserves your energy or wastes it. Each habit either sharpens your focus or dulls it. Those who understand this principle do not chase success. They build the internal conditions that make success inevitable. And that is the difference between people who rise briefly and those who remain powerful for decades.
After a person begins to understand that internal drive is energy, not emotion, the next realization becomes unavoidable. Energy must be governed by rules. Without rules, even the strongest drive eventually turns inward and becomes self-destructive. This is where most people sabotage themselves without realizing it. Unchanneled drive does not disappear. It mutates. It becomes anxiety, impatience, anger, restlessness, addiction to stimulation, or chronic dissatisfaction. People believe they lack motivation when in reality they suffer from excess energy with no structure. They're not tired, they're misaligned. The disciplined individual approaches drive the way an engineer approaches electricity. Too little power produces nothing. Too much power without regulation burns the system. The objective is not intensity, but controlled flow. This is why highly driven but undisciplined people often appear chaotic. They start many things and finish few. They burn hot and then vanish. Their ambition is real, but their structure is weak. Over time, this pattern creates frustration, self-doubt, and eventually resignation. The wealthy individual understands a hard truth. Structure is freedom. Rules are not limitations, they are channels. A river without banks becomes a flood. A river with strong banks becomes a source of life, power, and movement. This principle demands that you create constraints around your energy, fixed times for deep work,
clear priorities, defined standards for how you respond to stress, temptation, and boredom. Without these constraints, drive leaks into whatever is most immediately available. Most people live reactively. Their energy is pulled outward by notifications, opinions, trends, and emotional impulses. They feel busy but produce little. Motion replaces progress. Stimulation replaces achievement. The disciplined individual reverses this dynamic. He pulls energy inward first. He decides what matters before the world makes demands on him. He begins the day by investing energy into creation, not consumption. This single shift separates builders from spectators. Another misunderstood aspect of transmutation is emotional regulation. Drive is often strongest when emotions run high. Anger, desire, frustration, hunger for recognition. Most people either act impulsively during these states or suppress them entirely. Both approaches waste energy. The disciplined individual does neither. He observes emotion without identifying with it. He allows the energy to exist, then redirects it deliberately. Anger becomes focus. Frustration becomes persistence. Desire becomes ambition tied to a long-term objective. This ability requires distance from immediate reaction. That distance is not natural. It is trained. It is built through repetition. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you strengthen control. Each time you redirect instead of releasing, you compound power. This is why restraint feels difficult at first. You're interrupting deeply ingrained habits. Your nervous system is accustomed to immediate discharge. Discipline forces energy to remain contained longer than it prefers. But containment is what builds pressure, and pressure is what creates momentum. The wealthy individual is not driven by emotional highs. He operates from internal standards. He does not need to feel inspired to act. He acts because action aligns with who he has decided to be. Emotion becomes secondary. Identity becomes primary. This shift from emotional action to identity-based action is critical. Emotions fluctuate. Identity stabilizes. When discipline is anchored to identity, it becomes automatic. You no longer negotiate with yourself. You execute. Many people overestimate how much motivation they need. In reality, they lack systems. They wait to feel ready instead of building routines that remove the need for readiness. The disciplined individual builds his life so that correct action is the default, not the exception. Another layer of transmutation involves sexual energy, ambition, and creative force. Throughout history, high performers have recognized that the same energy that seeks pleasure can be redirected into creation. This is not about denial, it is about timing and purpose. Short-term release provides immediate relief but no lasting return. Redirection delays release but multiplies output. The disciplined individual understands opportunity cost. Every impulse satisfied immediately is energy that could have been invested elsewhere. This does not mean living in constant repression. Repression creates internal conflict. Redirection creates coherence. The difference is subtle but critical. Repression says no blindly. Redirection says later for something bigger. Most people live at the mercy of their impulses because they have never experienced the long-term rewards of control. Once you witness the compounding effect of disciplined energy, restraint stops feeling like sacrifice and starts feeling like leverage. Leverage is the correct word. Energy controlled over time creates disproportionate results. Small daily discipline produces massive long-term outcomes. This is why the wealthy appear patient. They are not passive, they are strategic. Another failure point occurs when people attempt to apply discipline inconsistently. They work intensely for short periods, then collapse. This pattern trains instability. The nervous system learns that effort leads to burnout. Over time, resistance increases. The disciplined individual avoids extremes. He respects recovery as much as effort. He understands that sustainability beats intensity. He builds rhythms, not sprints. This allows drive to remain available long-term instead of being exhausted prematurely. Consistency is not glamorous. It is repetitive. It lacks emotional spikes. This is precisely why it works. The mind resists boredom, but boredom is often a sign of mastery and progress. When execution becomes boring, results begin to compound. At this level, discipline becomes invisible. Outsiders see results but no effort. They assume talent, luck, or advantage. They do not see the thousands of quiet decisions that preserved energy and directed it forward. Another essential element of this principle is environment design. Willpower is a finite resource. The disciplined individual does not rely on it. He shapes his environment to reduce friction and temptation. He removes unnecessary decisions. He minimizes exposure to distractions. This is not weakness, it is intelligence. You do not prove strength by constantly resisting temptation. You prove strength by not needing to. The wealthy individual eliminates battles that do not serve his objectives. The same applies to relationships. Emotional chaos drains energy. Drama consumes attention. The disciplined individual chooses relationships that reinforce clarity, not confusion. He distances himself from people who normalize distraction, excuses, and impulsive behavior. This often creates loneliness in the short term, but loneliness is cheaper than chaos. Over time, alignment attracts aligned individuals. Discipline compounds socially as well as internally. Another critical misunderstanding is the belief that discipline kills creativity. In reality, it enables it. Creativity requires sustained attention. It requires depth. Distraction fragments thought. Structure allows ideas to mature. The greatest creators are not chaotic. They are methodical. They show up consistently. They protect their creative energy fiercely. Inspiration visits them because they have built a place for it to land. As drive becomes increasingly disciplined, decision-making simplifies. You no longer debate every choice. You measure decisions against long-term objectives. If it strengthens alignment, you proceed. If it weakens alignment, you decline. This reduces mental fatigue dramatically. Most exhaustion is not physical, it is cognitive. Endless small decisions drain energy faster than hard work. Discipline removes unnecessary choices. Over time, this creates a sense of internal calm. You are no longer at war with yourself. Desire, ambition, and action move in the same direction. Internal resistance fades. Progress accelerates. This is the state most people chase through external success, not realizing it must be built internally first. External wealth without internal discipline creates instability. Internal discipline eventually produces external wealth naturally. Another advanced aspect of transmutation is patience under uncertainty. Drive often demands immediate feedback. Discipline tolerates delayed feedback. The wealthy individual understands that progress is not always visible in the short term. He continues executing even when results lag. He does not abandon strategy due to temporary silence. This separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs need constant validation. Professionals trust process. Trusting process requires evidence built through experience. Each time disciplined action produces results, confidence shifts from hope to certainty. You stop needing reassurance. You know momentum is working beneath the surface. At this stage, setbacks lose emotional charge. Failure becomes data. Obstacles become signals. Energy is not wasted on self-criticism. It is redirected into adjustment. This emotional neutrality is often misinterpreted as coldness. In reality, it is clarity. The disciplined individual feels deeply, but acts deliberately. Emotion informs, it does not command. Eventually, disciplined drive becomes self-sustaining. You no longer feel pulled backward by old habits. New habits dominate. The identity has shifted. Control is no longer effortful. It is normal. This is why transformation appears suddenly to outsiders. Internally, it was gradual. Externally, it looks like an overnight change. In reality, it was years of quiet alignment. The second phase of this principle is not about adding effort. It is about removing waste. Leaking energy is the enemy. Focused energy is the asset. Every improvement comes from sealing leaks. When leaks are sealed, progress accelerates without additional force. This is leverage in its purest form. The individual who masters this does not chase discipline. He embodies it, and embodiment is permanent. This concludes
Transmutation of drive. When you truly understand and master the transmutation of inner drive, you enter a completely different phase of how you operate in life. At this stage, you no longer live based on momentary emotions, nor are you driven by external pressure. You begin to live from a stable internal force, quiet but relentless, strong enough to carry you through long periods without immediate rewards. Most people live in a reactive state without realizing it. They wait for inspiration before acting. They wait for favorable conditions before starting. They wait to be motivated, recognized, or pushed.
But waiting is the most subtle way to surrender control of your life. Those who master their drive do not wait. They create internal pressure, the pressure of personal standards, of promises made to themselves. At a higher level, drive is no longer something that comes and goes. It becomes a continuous current. You no longer ask yourself whether you feel like doing the work today. That question has been eliminated. What needs to be done gets done because it is obvious, like breathing or walking. When action becomes instinctive, procrastination has nowhere to exist. Many people believe discipline makes life dry and rigid. The reality is the opposite. Discipline frees the mind from endless small decisions, from pointless internal negotiations. When you no longer argue with yourself every day, you save an enormous amount of mental energy. That energy is redirected toward creation, strategy, and building. Transmuting drive also means you stop seeking constant stimulation. You no longer need emotional highs to feel alive. You learn to accept a slower, steadier, deeper rhythm. You understand that anything lasting is never built on temporary excitement. It is built through consistent presence, day after day. At this level, you clearly see the difference between pressure and direction. Pressure comes from the outside and forces reaction. Direction comes from within and creates initiative. Pressure drains you. Direction stabilizes you. The wealthy are not better at enduring pressure. They simply avoid placing themselves in reactive positions. One clear sign that drive has been transmuted is the ability to work in silence. You do not need to tell anyone what you are doing. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need constant validation. Satisfaction comes from knowing that every day you are laying another brick in a long-term structure. It is a deep, quiet satisfaction, not loud, but solid. At this level, failure no longer feels personal. It is no longer evidence of inadequacy. It becomes system feedback. You observe, adjust, and continue. No drama, no self-blame, no quitting. Only gradual evolution of strategy and capability. Those who have not mastered their drive live in cycles of excitement and collapse. When things go well, they overextend. When obstacles appear, they stop entirely. Those who transmuted drive operate differently. Their pace remains stable regardless of conditions. They do not accelerate excessively in favorable times, nor slow down drastically in difficult ones. That stability creates massive long-term advantage. When you maintain a steady rhythm long enough, something important happens. Results begin to compound, not linearly, but exponentially. Small, consistent efforts that once seemed insignificant begin reinforcing each other. This is when outsiders call it sudden success, but you know the truth. Nothing was sudden. Transmuted drive also changes your relationship with time. You stop obsessing over other people's speed. You stop comparing your progress to anyone else. You compare today only to who you were yesterday. When the reference point changes, the mind becomes quiet, and in that quiet, decision-making becomes far sharper. At a deeper level, you develop internal self-respect. Not the kind based on achievements or status, but the kind rooted in trust with yourself. You know that no matter what changes around you, you will act correctly. That trust creates a stability no one can take from you. With that stability, public opinion loses its power over you. Praise does not inflate you. Criticism does not weaken you. You listen to feedback, but you are not emotionally controlled by the crowd. You understand that the majority is rarely right in the long term. Transmutation of drive also shows itself in natural delayed gratification. Not forced restraint, but informed choice. You understand that each time you refuse short-term pleasure in exchange for long-term positioning, you strengthen your future leverage. The choice no longer feels painful. It becomes automatic. When this habit becomes strong, you build credibility with yourself. You do what you say. You keep your promises. Each time you do, internal trust increases, and that trust is the foundation of personal power. Those who do not trust themselves always need supervision. Those who do require none. At this stage, drive is no longer attached to a single goal. Even when a goal is achieved, you do not feel empty, because your drive comes from building, not achieving. The process becomes the reward. Work is no longer a burden to endure in order to arrive somewhere. It becomes the path you consciously choose to walk. Another critical shift is your ability to tolerate boredom. Most value in life is created during periods when nothing dramatic is happening. Those who cannot tolerate boredom seek stimulation and lose consistency. Those who master drive understand that boredom signals stability, and stability is the foundation of accumulation. When you become comfortable working in calm conditions, you become dangerous in a positive way. You do not require chaos to function. You do not need drama. You do not need crisis to feel progress. You build quietly, and by the time others notice, the gap is already too wide. Transmuted drive also improves how you manage relationships. You no longer seek emotional fulfillment from others. You enter relationships from a position of fullness, not deficiency. This changes everything. You choose partners, friends, and collaborators based on values and direction, not emotional dependence. At this point, you begin to understand why so many intelligent people never go far. They have ability and intellect, but no system for managing internal energy. Every setback drains them emotionally. Every success scatters their focus. Without transmutation, even great energy eventually leaks away. Those who master this principle understand that life is a long game. You do not need to win every round. You only need to stay in the game. To do that, you must preserve energy, clarity, and direction. Transmuted drive is the tool that makes this possible. Eventually, you stop calling it discipline or motivation. It becomes who you are, how you think, how you respond, how you choose. You no longer try to be strong. You simply are, quietly, reliably, consistently. Very few people reach this state, not because it's complex, but because it demands absolute honesty with oneself. There are no shortcuts, no easy paths, only daily training through small decisions repeated over time. When you master the transmutation of drive, you no longer depend on circumstances, emotions, or other people. You become your own source of power. And that is the deepest foundation of sustainable wealth, not only financially, but in total control over your life. Others may move faster in the short term, but those who master this principle go farther in the long term because they do not burn out, they do not scatter, they are not pulled off course. They advance steadily, step by step, until the goal is no longer something to chase, but something that cannot be avoided.
Subscribe and follow the channel for daily self-improvement and valuable knowledge.